Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to Books, Booze, and Murder.
Why are you whispering?
I don't know because we have
Okay.
new tech. Anyway, welcome to Books, Booze, and Murder. I'm Anna.
I'm Alexa.
We're two besties who have an obsession with books and true crime. And we have a new setup.
Yes. Christmas was very, very, very nice to Anna.
Yes. Well, yeah. So that's why I was whispering because I was like, whoa, we can actually hear ourselves and hopefully the audio will be a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, welcome. This is essentially your monthly book club check-in podcast with true crime tied in. And
Yeah.
of course, we have to have drinks. So,
Obviously.
yeah. So welcome to January. Is it a good January? I don't know.
I don't know if a good January.
I don't know.
Ugh.
I don't know. As of right now, we have the fires going on in California and
Dude, those are wild right now.
yeah. So I don't know how many listeners we have at the time from there, but obviously our hearts are with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I just want to say, like, it's not really our place right now to be like, here are some resources. But I think the thing that I want to mention is I have a coworker who worked with the Red Cross when everything went down
Mhm.
south last fall.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, everything was actually really disorganized.
For whatever reason, I hate to say that doesn't surprise me, but that doesn't surprise me.
Really?
I have extremely little faith in a lot of people in the higher up echelons of everything. Not
Yeah.
to be not to be what's the word I'm looking for? It's not sadistic. It's not
Cynical.
cynical. That one.
Yeah.
It's another word.
Yeah. I think that what the Red Cross does, like, I'm definitely not bashing them at all.
No.
But I guess my point is that there are a lot of organizations out there that are
Mhm.
doing really good work. And I think that they need to be given a little bit more credit than the Red Cross.
Thank goodness for all the people that are like putting in all the work that they have.
Yeah. And then did you see like Quebec and Mexico have actually like stepped in to send in reinforcements to help?
That's kind of wild.
Yeah. I'm like, we trash talk Quebec just
Every day.
with just how rude they can be. So I guess we'll have to adjust it as if they're a first responder. Well, they're killing
Thank
it.
you to all of our first responders.
Yes. Thank you to all the first responders. So yeah, we're off to a really awful start in
Yeah.
2025. But we're here to have fun. We're
Mhm.
here to laugh and we're here to drink.
Uh-huh.
Then again, that's just water that I'm drinking.
Shh, you don't have to tell them that.
Well, yeah, we have the good stuff in front of us too.
Exactly.
It's called balance.
Yes. Balance life. Yes. I agree.
Yeah. So, how are you?
I am permanently exhausted. Like so permanently exhausted. You know what's worse than having 10 5-year-olds looking at you right after a break and then being psychotic? Adding in an 11th that was kicked out of school. These are 5-year-olds, by the way. Brand new. As of this year, I found out the day before we were going on break in my pajamas because it was Polar Express Day.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah.
Permanently
Alexa
exhausted.
is exhausted from everything. I have like 2 cold sores that are raging right now. And I'm just like, that's not nice. That is not nice at all.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you are halfway through the school year, so at least there's that.
In theory. This is the longest stretch of the school year. For all of my other teacher friends out there, from now until spring break, it's the long haul. Because, like, I don't know about a lot of other school systems, but our school system does not have a February week break. We have 2 weeks of spring break, and those 2 weeks of spring break happen to fall at the end of March this year. So we have to get through all of January, all of February, all of March, and half of April. That is 3.5 very long months with a lot of kids who don't want to be there.
Would you prefer to have 1 week in February and 1 week in April, or would you prefer to just make it work and do the 2 weeks in April?
No, I like the 2 weeks in April because, frankly, 1 week of vacation is never enough. Like you can't do anything in just 1 week.
Got it.
It's like trying to cram it's like trying to drink water out of a fire hose. It never works.
Got it. Mm,
And then you just don't actually feel rejuvenated from your vacation.
got it. And when you're in the teaching spectrum,
You need that break.
for
I'd
sure.
rather just power through. I was actually talking to my nail lady about that today, and I was like, I don't know which I'd actually prefer, but I think I still prefer the way we're set up with 2 weeks of spring break. I'm okay with that.
That's fair.
Mhm. How about you? How you doing?
Surviving.
Yes.
I mean, this new setup, which we're still obviously getting used to, but this is definitely like, made me so excited.
Mhm.
So hopefully for listeners, it's a little bit more pleasant to listen to
Mhm.
rather than audio levels, which definitely tried to work with that. But as we mentioned before, Santo is very kind to me. So I was like,
Yes.
yay. So kudos to B&H Photo for hooking me up or us up
Nice.
with this new system. Yeah, still thriving in the troll hole.
We love the troll hole. I wish I could live in a troll hole sometimes. I kind of live in a troll hole right now.
Well, yeah, you kind of do.
Not
But
nearly as bad as your troll hole
no.
is. You have a legitimate troll hole. You're
Well,
like halfway underground.
I am. Well, so we went to a coffee shop this morning
Mhm.
because, as you know, my husband had surgery at the end of
Right.
December. So he hasn't really gotten out. And of course, he can't drink because he's on pain meds. So I was like,
Right.
let's just go to a coffee shop.
Mhm.
And as we're getting ready to sit down, this woman leaves from her table, which
Mhm.
is pretty sizable. It's right by the window. And I was like, I need the
Please give it to me.
window. Yep. So I was like, oh, wait, I feel energized. I feel very happy. I don't get this in the troll hole. I don't get sunlight.
And therein lies the problem, especially around this time of year. There's very little sunlight. And it's been so stinking cold here that it's like, I don't want to go outside.
Yeah.
I do not want to go anywhere because it's too cold.
Well, this past week, I didn't go for any walks with my dogs because I was like, it's freezing and it's
Mhm.
windy. No,
Mhm.
thank you.
No, thank you.
But today I did bring him on a cross country ski, so that was fun.
I am glad that you went and you still did that.
Yeah, it
That's
wasn't
awesome.
windy. It was great.
Oh, yeah. No, it was beautiful.
But yeah, so I've just been living in the troll hole.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, reading.
Mm-hmm.
I finally read Verity by
Oh my gosh,
Colleen
I
Hoover.
saw that you read that, and I have it, and it's on my to be read list. And I'm like, I have other things that I have to do first. I need to stop hitting the table.
Yeah, you're not used to it.
No, hands in my lap, hands in your lap,
Talking to yourself like you talk to the kindergartners.
dude. It's bad. Sit flat, hands in your lap, eyes forward. No.
I think it's gonna remind you of a book that we have covered.
Okay.
I'm not gonna tell you what,
Okay.
but I think it's gonna remind you of another book. And yeah.
Because I've heard this one is like very different from the rest of her books that she's read.
Yeah,
or
it's
written.
yeah, 100%. I will
Okay.
fully agree with that. I thought it was a pretty easy read. It's the ending and what people think and comparing notes. That's the big thing.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. Gotcha.
And then what else? Was that just the only one? I can't keep track of jack shit anymore.
I was about to say it hasn't been that long since we recorded.
Yeah.
So
Well, did I read Never Lie by Frida McFadden? Was the book.
yeah, that was a fast read for you. Of
Yeah.
course.
Did you read that?
Mm-mm.
Okay. It's
I think I have it, but I
yeah.
haven't read it yet.
Yeah. So I read that and I was like, holy moly.
Mhm.
Say what? Huh?
Mhm.
What?
Mhm.
Hmm?
Mhm.
What else is new, Frida
I was
McFadden?
gonna say she's good at just kind of
Yeah.
making that twist happen.
Yeah. And then I finally finished A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're reading it right now.
I am. I'm only about like a third of the way.
I mean,
fourth of the way through it, maybe.
you're a teacher reading like an 800-page book.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And frankly, I find it frustrating to try and read it because Nesta's so annoying.
She's very
She's
annoying.
such a giant pain in the ass in this book.
She's
I'm just like,
annoying and you're going to want to sucker punch her.
every page, I'm just like, swallow your pride, please. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Even Cassian's annoying too in this book where I'm like, ew, you're acting love struck. Like, stop. Just stop. Please. Be high fae. Be elegant like you're supposed to be. God. So
It gets
annoying.
better, but yeah, you're gonna want to sucker punch her a lot. So
Super.
either way, yeah. And then
Mhm.
obviously read our monthly book for this month.
Mhm.
Holy shit!
Mhm.
Holy shit!
Mhm. Mhm.
Holy
I
shit!
can't wait. I can't wait to talk about this because this is going to be it's going to be one of those books where I was like, "Whew."
Oh, girl, I have notes. I have notes.
I can see that. I can see this in front of me.
I tried to actually like be coordinated and remember things.
Mhm. Some days it happens and some days it doesn't.
Yeah.
And that's okay too.
Oh, for sure.
The other book I've started reading
Yeah.
right now is called The Reading List.
The reading. Okay.
I'm listening to it now. So this is I have my physical book and I have my reading and I have my listening book. I always seem to have two going on at the same time. But I am reading it on Libro FM. It is called The Reading List by Sarah Nisha Adams. And it just kind of talks about like saving a local library as of right now. It's like I'm not super far into it. It's interesting. It's all these people that visit this local library and the little things that are kind of pulling them together, but then having their own separate stories. Again, have not gotten very far into it, so I can't really give you much else other
Yeah.
than it seems pretty interesting because of course it's like and the reading list is this list of books that are like classics, like To Kill a Mockingjay, The Kite Runner,
Mockingjay or Mockingbird?
Mockingbird. To Kill a Mockingbird. Yes, that classic. I'm not drunk. Okay, I'm toast. I'm done talking now.
No, you're not, because you still have to give the summary. But
Yeah, no, I'm done talking about that then. I don't care.
But I think this is an episode where our brains just need to get a little fried.
Yes, my brain is going to be fried.
So what'd you make me this month?
These are gin margaritas.
Gin margaritas.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, I've never heard of that.
So the reason I made gin margaritas is because you know me, I've always said gin tastes like fucking Christmas tree. And if anyone of you have ever seen the front cover of Credence, it is filled with evergreen trees.
Yes.
And what is a better green drink than a margarita?
Okay. That's brilliant.
So it's gin. By the way, I made them doubles.
Yes. Yes.
So it is. So the original recipe calls for 2 ounces of gin, an ounce of orange liqueur. I use triple sec, and an ounce of lime juice.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then of course I rimmed it with. I did not have kosher salt. I did not have margarita salt, so I used iodized salt.
Meh.
We'll see how it tastes.
I'm sure it'll be fine.
We'll go from there.
It's still salt.
It's still salt. It's the saltiness we need, damn it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well,
All
cheers.
right. Cheers.
Let's see. Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
good. Oh, good.
Yep. We about to get fucked up in here.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
So
yeah.
speaking of me swearing, want to hear a funny story?
I'd love to.
Talking with my mother today.
Okay.
She listens to the podcast,
Of
so
course
I
she
know
does.
she's going to hear this.
Hi, Kalora.
She
You're getting called out right now.
she swears, and my husband, the calls on speaker.
Mm-mm-mm.
My husband's right there, and he starts laughing, and I was like, "What?" He goes, "I've never heard her swear before." And then she goes, Alexa's just like, "Fuck!" I slammed the table
I
again.
did it again. I barely touched it.
We'll get better at this. We'll get better.
No, I will not. I think that's the sad part is I will not.
But he goes like, "I've never heard your mom swear." Well, I've never heard you swear before.
Mhm.
And my mom's like, "Yeah, I realized my daughter's teaching me that while I'm listening to her podcast."
Sorry, not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry. But yeah, and then we were having Christmas
Mhm.
with family members.
Mhm.
And my niece told me she listens to us. And I was like, "Oh boy, now I need to watch what I say." No, I'm not, but that's okay.
No, we're not.
So hi,
I was
Olive.
going to say, she's an adult.
She is an
She
adult.
can hear us swear. It's fine.
Yes, she's an adult. She can hear us swear. She loves talking about books. She's very fascinated. But yeah, I was like, "Hello, Olive. Here's a shout out to you. Thanks for listening. I guess I'm that cool in your book. I appreciate it."
We'll take it.
Okay, so we have our drinks.
Yes.
I should
And
probably put the book in front of you.
all
Maybe.
right. Well, I forget. Do we read the back? I
Mm,
think so.
you give your summary, and then every time I say, make sure you speak slow enough so people can follow what you are saying.
And I probably will not today. Okay, well, either way,
Yep.
I already read the summary in the last episode, so I don't
Mm-hmm.
feel the need to read it again. We'll be fine.
All good.
But Credence by Penelope Douglas. Wow! Talk about a book that made me blush a little.
Yeah.
I still don't know how I truly feel after reading this book.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, I really think I liked it. The plot was interesting and definitely had a very solid smut factor and an almost cringe factor.
Yeah.
Like I was slightly uncomfortable at points because I'm like, oh, that's a line. There's a line there, and you're towing it.
Yeah. Yep.
We start with Tiernan, who is the daughter of a movie star and a movie producer. Her father is diagnosed with cancer, so he and the mother decide to commit suicide together. What a beginning of a book.
Oh
Holy
my God.
smokes.
Yeah.
Tiernan was, of course, the one to find them. It seems like they were never great parents to begin with. It sounds like they were more obsessed with each other and they had a child because it was expected of them. After they pass, Tiernan is only 17, which means she is not a legal adult yet, and she has no family other than her dad's stepbrother, who lives on top of a mountain in Colorado that gets snowed in every year from November to April, which sounds awesome, by the way. Sounds like my like icing on top of the cake
Yeah.
thing. Tiernan chooses to go to her Uncle Jake's with her two step cousins, Noah and Caleb. She's hoping to run away from the world and everything that her parents created. Tiernan goes to Chapel Peak and meets Jake and Noah while Caleb is in the woods. It's about September, so Tiernan still has to go to school, online, of course, and the house isn't snowed in yet. Tiernan is easily the prettiest person in Chapel Peak, so she receives a lot of attention from the local motocross people. I think this is also one of those like small town deals where, ooh, new shiny object. I'm gonna look at that and that and that and oh, shiny object. I want that. That's the big thing, including for Jake and Noah, who build and design bikes from their garage. Tiernan already starts to rub elbows with some sketchy people, including Terrence Holcomb and Cece. What wonderful, wonderful humans they are. Terrence has a wall that he posts all of his sexual conquests on, and Cece is trying to convince Tiernan that Jake, Noah, and Caleb Vanderberg are more sexually active than it seems. Tiernan does discover that the boys all share one bathroom, and there always seems to be extra guests. Tension starts to build between Tiernan and Noah and Jake. Sexual tension.
Mm-hmm.
Jake, of course, is doing his best to resist Tiernan. This is the uncle, by the way. And Tiernan is doing her best to avoid the world. All the while, Tiernan has been welcomed into the family, and Noah and Jake have claimed Tiernan as their family. Now, Caleb is a little different. The night he comes back from being in the woods, he essentially mauls Tiernan and starts ripping off her clothes, and she doesn't really want him to stop, but is saying, stop. And Caleb doesn't talk. He can hear, but he will not talk to a traumatic event that happened when he was 4. Noah walks in just in time to rip Caleb off of Tiernan and send them their separate ways. The next day, Tiernan catches Caleb in the barn with Cece. Caleb is getting a blowjob and sees Tiernan watching him, and they both seem to like it. Another day, they all go to the fair, and Tiernan and Cece start dancing and receive a lot of attention, which Jake pulls her away from. Another day, Tiernan goes to a swimming hole by herself and runs into Terrence Holcomb, and he tries to get into her pants right then and there. Noah and Caleb find Tiernan with Terrence and bring a shotgun to scare the bastard off. And yet another day, they all go to the swimming hole, and in the cave behind the waterfall, Tiernan starts to masturbate, but then runs into Cece and Caleb in the cave. She leaves and continues on. One night, Tiernan watches a porno movie with Noah and Caleb and almost has a three-way with them right in the living room, with Jake coming down from his room just in time to break up the shenanigans. The night before, her and Jake got way closer with bodies mashed against each other. She makes a trip back home for her parents' funeral and returns to Chapel Peak for her birthday. So everything's kind of like settled down at that point. She goes out to a bar with the boys and ends up being cornered by Terrence's friends and Cece, who keep trying to tell Tiernan that she should be careful around the Vanderbergs because they do weird stuff in the long winters. Caleb ends up pushing them all off her and then pushing their bikes over and doing damage. Good for him. They suck. They all
Mhm.
start to run back to the house up the mountain just as the snow starts to fall and cage them in for the winter. Again, perfect timing.
Oh, yeah.
Shortly afterwards, Tiernan goes on a hunting trip with the boys and kills a deer because Jake convinces her that he wants to make sure she can take care of herself. As they are loading up the trucks, this is when things set fire between Jake and Tiernan. In the back of his truck, after she shot her first deer, Jake takes her virginity and she spends many more nights in his bed and getting to know his first love and the boy's mother, who is in jail for child endangerment and drugs. By the way, his first love and the boy's mom is not the same person.
Yep.
As they are now snowed in, they can only rely on each other now. Tiernan spends more nights in Jake's room than her own room, but continues to work on maintaining the property. Tiernan finds there is furniture in the loft of the barn and starts working to restore it. All the while, Tiernan is gaining confidence, feeling more like the mountain is her home with the boys, and dreading the spring when she has to go off to college. Every now and then, the conversation comes up in the house, and Caleb starts to push her away more. Jake knows it's coming, and Noah refuses to accept that reality because, as long winters can do, they have all started to form a bond. One night when Jake has gone to the cabin, the hunting cabin, for a weekend hunt, Caleb, Noah, and Tiernan are home, and all of a sudden, the barn catches fire. The three of them work frantically to put it out, but Tiernan ends up getting hurt and then has a threesome with both of her cousins. Step cousins.
Mhm.
Still weird.
Mhm.
She is so confused and doesn't know what to do. She wants to love Noah because it's expected, but this is the only time anything sexual happens between them. Caleb is the one that she falls for, the one that she wants to have a future with, even with his lack of communication. She keeps trying to imagine what it would be like, but she keeps coming to the same conclusion that it could never work because Caleb won't let it work. Caleb and Tiernan keep fighting over nothing because Caleb wants her to stay, but thinks that everybody who is important to him is going to leave. So Caleb leaves after a big fight with Tiernan to go to the hunting camp. Things at the house keep going as normal, and Tiernan keeps trying to accept moving away and going to school and trying to figure out Caleb. At one point, she goes into his room while he is away at fishing camp, hunting camp, whichever it is, and looks through all of his books that he reads and figures out this is the way that he talks and says how he feels. She spends a long time reading through these book journals and finds out how he lost his voice and what happened to the boy's mom. Turns out she was in it with the wrong people, drugs and stuff, brought Caleb along to a drug house, and kept him trapped in the car for 2 days while she was making bad decisions. And he was screaming for someone to help him. Since that day when he was 4, he never spoke again. As Tiernan makes this discovery, she talks Noah into taking her to the cabin to bring Caleb home because it has been very cold and very snowy, and he's been gone for 3 months. They take the snowmobiles in without Jake's permission because he would have said no and make their way to the cabin. They find Caleb, have some sexy time, just Tiernan and Caleb, and then go back to the cabin. It's almost spring, meaning the roads will be opening up soon, and they can go back into town. As soon as the roads open, Tiernan and Caleb go into town and run into Cece, who is pregnant. And if you do the math, from hers and Caleb's hookup, the math seems about right that she would be that far along. So Tiernan's head is spinning, and the one person that has always cared for her and was her parents' assistant is coming to Colorado, and she hasn't seen her since her parents' funeral. She's also been like frantically trying to reach out
Mhm.
all winter long to Tiernan, and it's like, I can't. And again, Tiernan's like trying to keep her at bay because she doesn't want her to come because it's like you definitely don't come. You shouldn't come.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the house gets broken into during the night when the boys are in town sorting out the CC situation and the bike situation the previous fall. Shitbag Terrence breaks in with a couple of the Goonies and tries to basically rape Tiernan, and she has to fend for herself. The boys make their way back with the police, and Tiernan's parents' assistant flies there and is trying to take Tiernan back to California. Tiernan was wishy-washy whether or not she was going to go because she doesn't want to leave Caleb, but Caleb quickly puts an end to that and shoves her and her suitcase in the car and sends them off. Tiernan is obviously crushed. Months go by, and Tiernan is trying to re-find normal. She is staying at her parents' house with the assistant friend, taking walks and so forth. One day, she takes a walk to the beach and runs into Noah, who has signed a deal with a motocross racing company who are sponsoring him for races. It actually turned out that Jake started working for the company and is managing the new branch while also modifying the bikes with paint jobs, motors, etc. He always wanted Noah to get out of Chapel Peak, even went as far as telling Tiernan to take him as well when she left. Noah tells all of this to Tiernan. They come over for dinner, and Jake and the assistant are bickering like an old married couple. Obviously, flames are going to start there,
Mm-hmm.
meaning they are obviously going to end up together, but Tiernan wants to know where Caleb is and if anything has changed. One night, she looks out her window and sees a tire swing that used to be there but was taken down. She goes to it, and of course, Caleb put it there. He comes out from behind the tree, and turns out he starts talking to
Mm-hmm.
her. He took books out to the cabin and started reading them out loud to himself to practice talking again in order to tell Tiernan that he loved her. And that is the end of my synopsis. That's our summary. Again, I don't know how I feel about it. If it wasn't like, yeah, I've done every single one of my step family, I'd be like, that could be a really cute love story. Slightly uncomfortable.
I mean, I think that's the point, right?
Yes, probably. Probably.
Yeah. I thought it was a wild ride, and I was constantly thinking to myself, they're not biologically related. They're not biologically related. That's fucked up, but they're not biologically related. What the fuck?
I had to keep reminding myself of
Yeah.
that too.
Okay. That was a fantastic summary.
Oh, good.
Good job. To be honest with you, you know what fact really bothered me for
What?
most of the book? There was no actual description of what they looked like.
Wow. You are not wrong. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I was like, okay, what do these characters look like? Huh? What?
Nothing? Leave it to my imagination? Okay.
Well, that bothered me. I was like, I don't know if I like this. I don't know if I like this. But then I went on TikTok and somehow I got into the algorithm of AI. Like, this is what I think this person looks like.
Okay.
And I found a video.
Ooh.
So I'm going to show it to you, but I'm going to try to describe it first.
Okay.
So Tiernan is obviously young,
Of course.
brown hair, but
Mhm.
then she has blonde highlights,
Mhm.
long hair,
Mhm.
and
Very
like, I think-
LA-esque, probably.
yes, blue eyes.
Oh, of course.
And then stop go on TikTok. Okay.
Mhm.
And then it's Noah, who's obviously muscular,
Mhm.
brown hair,
Mhm.
blue eyes, I think. A little bit of facial hair,
Okay.
unruly brown hair for sure.
Mhm.
I promise you I'm going to show you this once I'm done describing it.
Yep, as you should describe it first.
And then Noah has more dirty blonde hair, still muscular.
You mean Caleb?
Yes, Caleb.
Okay.
Excuse me. Still muscular, but more dirty blonde hair. And then the uncle, definitely dirty blonde hair, much more rugged.
Mhm.
It's a little wild. Okay, I'm gonna show this to you now.
Okay. Uh-huh. Mhm. Yep, that makes sense.
So you're looking at Tiernan.
No, nope. I was looking at, hang on, I gotta rewind it a little bit more. Okay, so there's Tiernan. Yep. Now there's Noah.
Yep.
Keep going, keep going. Okay, we see an ocean. Yes, very nice.
Yep. Making a note so that we can share this so people know what the hell we're talking.
That makes a lot of sense for Caleb. I can definitely see that like wounded warrior look in his eyes.
Yeah.
Oh, yep. That's definitely Jake. Oh, so good.
I'm not gonna lie, all three are quite handsome.
They're very, very handsome, but I gotta say, I think Jake takes the cake right there.
He's pretty gorgeous.
Oh.
But then again, we're in our 30s and these guys are in like their early 20s, so it's kind of like
Yeah, right? And I gotta say, it was like kind of super weird how much Tiernan spent in Noah's room.
Mm-hmm.
And like the weird relationship that Tiernan and Caleb had, where it's like they'd start going at it, and then he would start to almost feel lovey and gushy, and then he'd revert back to his animalistic self of, "Nope, we're gonna be rough.
Yeah.
It's gonna be rough, and I want it, and I want it now."
Mhm.
I'm like, "Oh, oh, 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 okay. Can you
Yeah.
slow down a little bit?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, this is not the end all be all, bud. I know you think that, so we need a lot of therapy right now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Um, I am not shocked that Jake and is it Mirai? Is that I didn't even know how to pronounce her name when I was reading.
Yeah, no, I didn't know how to pronounce her name. I was almost thinking it's like Murray or
I
something.
don't know. But I'm not at all shocked because knowing that,
No.
as you mentioned in the summary, like she kept calling Tiernan and
Mhm.
then when she didn't answer, she'd always call Jake. So they had a banter this entire time. So it's not shocking to know at the very end.
Right.
Wait, wait, you didn't bring up the extra chapter.
The extra chapter. Oh, in the very end? No, I didn't bring up the extra
Okay,
chapter.
we'll talk about that once for was that
Huh? Okay, I think I forgot about the extra chapter.
um
So you keep going.
but I also thought, did you feel like the relationships and the feelings felt rushed? Maybe because of
Yes.
like the time jumping? Because it would be like
Yeah,
2 months
cuz
later.
yeah, maybe it did feel kind of rushed, but that was exactly what it was. I think that was the goal of it. Is it
Yeah.
it didn't necessarily feel rushed, or it was supposed to just kind of expedite the whole book.
Yeah.
Because again, it's one of those books that takes place over
Months.
9 months,
Yeah.
10 months,
Yeah.
whatever it is, almost a year
Yeah.
probably. And we're trying to cram it all into a 500-page book.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're not going to do every single little detail, but it's like, yeah, it is weird that you're deciding to go and watch a porno with your cousins, and then your cousins are on both sides of you, just kind
Yeah.
of looking down at you like
Yeah.
fucking starving animals. I'm like,
Yep.
okay,
Mhm.
okay,
Um, and I guess when it was her birthday, I don't know if I would have had the guts to walk into town like she did, all good, all dolled up. Because, like, I feel like where we live, it's very similar to the town that they were in. So to
right.
dress up in a dress and very high heels, you
hmm
stand out like a sore thumb.
But that was probably what she knew in LA.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, she didn't stand out in LA. It's just kind of like, I want to go out for my birthday. I want to be seen. I want to feel good. And
Yeah. True.
I feel like when you're from any big city, you're just like, yep, I'm going to wear the short dress. Yep, I'm going to wear the tall heels. And yep, I'm going to go out and I'm going to have a drink and I'm going to have fun.
I guess that's a testament to we're not city girls. No, we're
No.
not.
Give me my flannel and my jeans.
Mm-hmm. Oh
Thank
yeah.
you much.
Yep. And if I'm feeling fancy, boots with leggings and something else along over
Mm,
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, but yeah, the sex with Jake, I was like, they're not biologically related. They're not
Uh-huh.
biologically related. Like, keep it together. Um, okay. So the porn scene didn't bother me, only that Tiernan's actions were weird when masturbating. Like,
Yeah.
forgetting that two horny 20-year-olds are right there. I'm like, come on now. Come on.
Like really, you're gonna forget that? No
Yeah.
way, not
No.
in hell. You're asking for something.
Yeah. Um, we got to talk about the threesome.
Yeah.
Were you, sorry, mom, were you like, were you like, were you like, huh? What? Huh? How?
Um, um, I don't know if I was kind of like that, but I was kind of just like, no. Like,
I guess one aspect would be like, ow.
yeah, right. Right though.
Yeah.
Like,
I was like,
I
but then I was like, do I want to imagine how this looks? I don't really know.
was about to say, I obviously did because I can't help myself.
Yeah.
But it's like, you'd better be real close and comfy with your brother and be very comfortable in your own sexuality to be like, I am confident that I'm doing a good job.
I mean, if you grew up where it's the three of you stuck in a house all winter,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you're going to be kind of close with your brother for sure. The animalistic parts to them.
Still weird.
It was still
Just
very
so
weird. But I was not expecting that.
Mm-mm.
I was like, say what? Huh?
Mhm.
What? And then, um, yeah, and then I just thought it was weird that, like, I did really enjoy the book for sure, like,
Mhm.
I can
Mhm.
see what
Mhm.
all the hype is about, um, but her, like, falling head over heels with Caleb, I was like,
Of
"What
course you'd fall for
changed?"
the most damaged one.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was like, why him of all people? Like, I really liked Noah.
Right?
I was like, "Okay, he's a little bit closer to your age, like, he is the nicest one, like, yeah, he does have, like, the animalistic tendencies,
He
but"
wants to get in your pants as well. It's
Yeah,
not like he's completely not interested. He
exactly.
talks, he's super sweet.
Yeah,
What the fuck?
yeah. But then to go from she's having sex in the shower with Jake,
Mhm.
and then she's going bouncing between the rooms, I'm like, "Damn, girl. Damn." And
Like,
they were, like, your 1st, 2nd, 3rd last.
yeah, which is, like, weird too.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
Quite literally in that order, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, last.
And I'm not gonna lie.
Because she never goes back to Jake or Noah
Yeah.
after she starts sleeping with Caleb, right?
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong?
No, I think you're right. For sure.
Mhm.
Oh, and then how he's been writing in the books instead of journals or anything like that. I was like, "Whoa."
Like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That was a very interesting little aspect there.
But I also just thought it was so weird that he was so used to, like, taking what he wanted and being so rough about it,
Mhm.
and then became more gentle.
Mhm.
But I will say at the end when he started talking, I was like, "What? What?
Uh-huh.
Huh?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
What?"
Uh-huh.
So do you remember that extra chapter?
Well, I went and I started looking through it, and of course, it's like 5 years later.
Yeah. Do you remember it? I read it a little bit more recently than you. Do you want me to summarize it?
Yeah, if you wanna summarize it, but
Yeah.
it's basically like isn't it like
It's
they're
5
o
years
yeah,
later.
they're on a camping trip.
Yeah.
They start off having sex in
In
the
the tent.
tent, and they have a kid.
Yeah. So it's 5 years later. She's gone to school and gotten, I think it was her bachelor's in Seattle.
Mhm.
And Caleb stuck by her side the entire
Yes.
time.
Yes.
And then they did have a kid together who was like
Mhm.
18 months old. And Noah and the kid have like really bonded
Of
and they spent the
course.
night in the tent. And you're just
Mhm.
like, oh, so cute. And
Mhm.
then Jake is with Mariah, or however you pronounce her name.
Right.
But she was like, oh, no one should know we are sleeping together. And it's like, well, it's obvious you've been banging for over a year.
Like, come on. We know.
So I will say that I think I really enjoyed that ending. Like, I guess I like cheesy, happy endings for sure. So that made me really happy. But also knowing that, like, they were going to go back to Colorado, I liked the ending.
That's fair. That extra chapter definitely did give it that, like, little bit of a wrap up in the
Yeah.
end, where they have the far outreaching businesses, because I think Noah's still a huge part of the California stuff,
Yep.
but he goes back and forth because then Jake is the head of the one in Colorado.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it is kinda nice that it's like, okay, you still kept to your roots. You didn't completely abandon everything to go live in LA with
Hmm.
like that. Yeah. It is pretty nice.
Um, yeah, definitely really nice. I feel awful that her parents were pieces of shit.
That was just like, that was awful. I'm like,
Hmm.
you were that obsessed with each other that you completely missed out on your entirety of your daughter's life.
Yeah.
God,
Makes you thank God for Mariah. Like,
dude, that woman loved her like her own child.
yeah,
That was
absolutely.
amazing to me.
Yeah.
Like, good for you, girl. Glad you had the mom figure at least.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. 100%.
Yeah.
And then I'm not going to lie, like when I read like Cabin in the Woods, I
Mhm.
honestly thought it was going to be a small rustic cabin.
Mhm.
No, this thing is like a cabin mansion.
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit, can I live there?
You please?
I like it.
Pretty please? Can I have that's like a 4 bedroom. The one bathroom thing would bother me.
Yeah.
Like, of all the reasons, of all the things that you've done to that cabin, how in the hell did you not put another bathroom in there?
Yeah.
What is wrong with you? Ay, ay, ay.
Yeah. And I also thought it was interesting, like you had mentioned, like all their visitors that came over.
Mm-hmm.
They're just, apologies for the crude term, just man whores.
Horn
Like,
dogs. They
yeah.
were.
Horn dogs.
They were.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep. Mhm.
So yeah, I 100% see what the hype is all about. I actually was despite being shocked, I really enjoyed that book.
Mhm.
I would definitely read more by her.
Mhm.
So, one thing that was funny was, so as we both know, you got married
Yep.
a little over a year ago,
Mhm.
and we were doing our first quote unquote book club, and you're like, "Oh, why don't we do Credence?" Well,
I am really glad that we decided to not do that for our very first book club because
that was your bridal shower.
that was my bridal shower, and I had a lot of people that were reading that book that probably should not have read that book.
Yep. So you almost chose that and you went with a historical fiction, but I was like,
I
okay.
was okay with All the Light We Cannot See too. I
Yep.
loved that book. That one was so good. That's one of those books where I feel like I need to read it again because it was that good.
It was really good.
That was good.
But I just was giggling because I was like, you almost picked that book.
Oh, trust me. Trust me. There's a reason. There's a reason I did that, and it's fine. I thank goodness for that every single day that that was not the one that I asked my mother to read.
That's
Sorry,
all right.
mom.
I was telling my mom about it. Like, I didn't tell her the
Mhm,
crude sex
mhm, mhm,
scenes for
mhm,
sure.
mhm.
But she's like, wait a second, can I read it?
Sure,
I
Laura.
know. So,
Anyone can read it. I'm just
yep.
going to give you a warning. It made me uncomfortable.
It's it's interesting. It's
Mhm.
popular for a reason.
Yeah.
So, solid pick. We got to go over it anyway, and you got me to read it. So that was a solid pick.
That was a good one. Done. Check. Check that one off the list.
Oh yeah.
Did you have any other notes?
No, I think that was it.
Cool.
Solid pick. All
On
right.
to true crime.
On to true crime. Let's turn the page.
Oh, dun, dun, dun.
Okay. So, TNFT people, and if you don't know what the fuck that means by now, it's the next fitness thing. This is the story that you've been waiting on.
Oh.
So, fun fact for the fitness platform I keep talking about, I do True Crime 40.
Mm-hmm.
Time constraint 40 minutes. I had more questions, so I did further research.
Ooh.
So, you're getting as much information as I know. Okay. Yeah. So, sources this month include newspaper sources from local newspapers. I have to be very broad in terms because you'll learn why.
Mm-hmm.
The FBI website and the latest season of Wild Crime now on Hulu.
Ooh.
Your brain's going to get fucked up. Even
Probably.
more.
Probably.
Okay. In 1984, Sherry Odegaard gave birth to her daughter, Julie Harris. At 23 months old, Julie was diagnosed with a bacterial infection that was in her bloodstream, causing blood in her feet to become so poisoned that they, and most of her legs under her knees, had to be removed.
Oh, no.
She'd become the definition of handy capable. I liked that. Not
Okay.
handicapped, handy capable.
I like that. Okay.
As she was highly successful in the Special Olympics and even won a gold medal for downhill skiing. So this
Very
girl was
cool.
athletic. It was great.
Okay, cool.
She was kind and non-judgmental towards other kids and was a proud big sister to her younger brother Clifford. And her favorite activity was to swim, as that's when she felt the most free.
I like it.
Gravity wasn't there to bring her down, so every day that the community pool was open, she was there with her best friend, Loretta. In the summer of 1995, the two girls spent most of their time at the pool, and when they were done, they'd hang out by the fence waiting for a ride home.
Mm-hmm.
One day, they saw a teenage boy on the swing set staring them down. He approached the two girls and told Julie that she was cute. For Loretta, she knew something wasn't right. An older boy talking to two 12 to 13-year-old girls?
Oh, yeah, that's weird.
Yeah. Julie was flattered that a boy would pay attention to her at all, and she gave him her phone number.
Oh, that sounds like a bad idea.
Uh-huh. On March 3rd, 1996, Julie stepped out of her house at around 8 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
She was supposed to be picked up by some neighbors who were going to bring her to church, but that never happened.
Oh.
When they arrived to pick her up, she wasn't there.
Uh-oh.
She disappeared and was considered a runaway the following day.
Interesting.
2 weeks after she was reported missing, her prosthetic legs and backpack were found 10 miles from her home on shore of the Colville River.
Oh.
13 months later, after everything went down, children playing along a rural road spotted a skull.
Oh, no.
A check of dental records confirmed it was Julie. According to the autopsy, she had a rough time before she died. Therefore, her death was being considered a homicide.
Good choice.
Unfortunately, her case would go cold.
Oh,
April 8th, 2009.
okay.
48-year-old Deborah J. Feldman of Hackensack, New Jersey, struggled for years with addiction.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't surprising when one day she said she was going to meet someone for drugs. What was strange was she never came back.
Ooh.
Okay,
Interesting.
hold on to your britches.
Oh, goodness.
Essex, Vermont, June 2011.
Yep, we know where that is.
Yeah, when we say we're going to go visit some friends, that's where we go.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Bill and Lorraine Courier didn't have kids, but they had nieces and nephews that they adored.
Mm-hmm.
They'd chosen to live in Essex because the neighborhood, which we can testify to,
Mm-hmm.
was beautiful and considered safe.
Mm-hmm.
They were not the type to stray from their routine, and other than family, didn't really socially interact with many people.
Mhm.
Not a bad thing. One night when they were sleeping in their bed, an intruder broke into their garage and came into their house.
Ooh.
They woke up to a gun in their face and a
Oh.
light from a headlamp.
Oh.
The intruder told them to turn over and keep their faces in their pillows. Their wrists were secured with cable ties, and they asked what was going on, and they were told that this was a kidnap for ransom.
Oh.
Was this a case of mistaken identity? Nope.
Oh.
They were forced into their car, and more cable ties were used to bind their feet together.
Oh.
Lorraine was in the front, and Bill was in the back. They were driven to an abandoned farmhouse, and Bill was taken from the car and brought to the basement. It was there that his hands were cable tied to a stool that had been backed up against the wall before the intruder left him to go get Lorraine. By the time the intruder went to get her, she had managed to break free. Yes, go girl, go.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And had started to run away.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, she didn't make it far when the intruder got a hold of her and brought her upstairs. Before the intruder could do anything, noise was heard in the basement. The stool had tipped over and the cable ties had somehow come apart.
Oh.
Upon seeing the intruder, Bill kept trying to talk them out of doing what they were doing and let him and Lorraine go. Unfortunately, the intruder laughed at him and told him a lot of planning had gone into this night, too much to simply walk away.
Interesting.
Bill was then hit in the head with a shovel a couple times before the intruder rushed off. Thinking it was the perfect time to get away, Bill got up and started up the stairs when he met his fate, and he was shot multiple times.
Oh, no.
Meanwhile, Lorraine is upstairs when the intruder approaches her again, and she's raped multiple times throughout the night and brought down to the basement and strangled to death from behind
Oh,
with a rope.
yucky. I don't like that.
Yeah, me neither.
Don't like that.
Nope.
No.
Their bodies were put into contractor bags and covered in debris, which included wood and trash and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Later, the farmhouse would be demolished and their bodies would be hauled away to the local landfill,
Oh.
never to be seen again.
Oh, wow.
Born in Alaska in 1993,
Mm-hmm.
Samantha Koenig and her dad, James Koenig, were close. We're talking she was his only biological child, and he had full custody of her since she was 2 years old.
Wow.
She loved animals, hanging out with her friends, fishing with her family, playing music, photography,
Sure.
writing music and poetry, camping, and playing Call of Duty with her boyfriend.
Okay, good for you, sweetheart.
Yep.
Not for me, but good for
Yep.
you.
Her older sister, Kaylee, loved hanging out with her because Samantha was the more outgoing one and she was the shy one.
Okay.
So Samantha helped her get out of her bubble.
Right.
Pretty typical of a teenage girl.
Mhm.
She had a strong desire to work with animals, but hadn't made up her mind on if that meant going into the equestrian field
Mhm.
or with wild animals. She wasn't sure.
Okay.
And she was considering joining the Navy to become a nurse and work her way up from there.
Bless her. Thank you.
I know, right? On February 1st, 2012, she was at work at a coffee stand called Common Grounds Espresso. Now, do you know what a coffee stand is out west?
Probably not.
Okay. So, I mean, East Coasters here. We don't see that around
I
here
was
really
about
at all.
to say, if it's any of the coffee stands, any of the coffee stands I've seen, then yes, sure. I know what a coffee stand is, but I'm assuming Since it's West Coast, it's different.
Like tiny shacks, drive up window just for coffee.
Oh, I've seen those in New Hampshire then.
Oh, really?
There's a couple of them in New Hampshire.
Okay.
When we go to New Hampshire, they're my dad's favorite things to go to. Like there's one, it's like it's literally
Tiny.
like a double the size of this table, maybe
Yeah.
4 times the size of the table that we're sitting at,
Mhm.
and you drive up, you ask for your coffee, you go.
Okay, yeah, it's
Yeah,
exactly that.
yeah,
Yeah, and they're all over the West Coast, like, all over.
got it.
Okay, that's interesting. I learned
Mm-hmm.
something new.
Mm-hmm.
So she was working in one of those.
Okay.
Da, 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 da. So at the time, most of the stands would be run by young women all on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the case in New Hampshire too?
Not young women all on their own. I think
Okay.
it's usually maybe 2 people. Because
Okay.
again, small spaces. It
Yeah.
just depends on who they hire.
Okay. Yeah, so it's mainly like young women on their own.
Okay.
Okay. So she's working in one of them and closing up one night when a guy approached the window around 8:15.
Mm-hmm.
This key detail stands out as not many people walk up to these stands. They
Right.
mostly drive up.
Right.
She greets him and starts to prepare his order before seeing a gun and puts her hands up.
Ooh, no, thank you.
Her customer orders her to turn off all the lights, take money out of the cash register, and put on her coat. She did not trigger the alarm because this piece of shit had a police scanner playing in his ear.
Oh.
So he would know when she pressed it. Once her coat was on, he had her get on her knees and back
Shit.
up to the window when he proceeded to put cable ties on her hands. Once her arms were tied up, he had her move back from the window, waited until not many people were around, and then jumped through it into the stand.
Hmm.
He stuffed her mouth with napkins and told her they were going for a
Ew.
little walk.
No, thank you. I don't want to go with you.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-mm.
She walked from the stand without a struggle. However, about 100 to 200 feet from the stand, she starts fighting and tries to run away, but he tackled her. He proceeds to put her in his truck and drove all over Anchorage.
Wow.
During the drive, she tried talking to him multiple times, but he kept telling her to be quiet. And if it's not clear by now, she's trying to personalize with him to get out of the
Right.
situation.
Right.
He told her he was planning a quick turnaround regarding ransom,
Mm-hmm.
putting her under the impression that this was all about money.
Interesting.
He then asks her for a cell phone, in which she responds with that it's still at the stand.
Mm-hmm.
So he drives back to get it and starts to send text messages. To Samantha's boyfriend, he said, "F you, asshole. I know what you did, and I'm going to spend a couple days with friends, need time to think, plan, acting weird, and let my dad know."
Oh, okay. Okie dokie then.
But these texts would ultimately buy him some time before a missing persons call would be made.
Right.
So she was brought back to his home around midnight and brought to his shed adjacent to his home. And note, there were other people in this house.
Mm-hmm.
One was asleep and one was still awake. And he did this all underneath their noses.
Wow.
Yep.
Okie dokie then.
So in the shed, the guy goes through her wallet but can't find her debit card.
Mhm.
She tells him that it's at home and he leaves her to go find it.
Mm-hmm.
He eventually finds it in a truck, and then here comes his next issue.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know what the pin is to the card.
Obviously.
So he goes back to his home where Samantha gives it to him and he scratches a number into the back of the card. He drives to the closest ATM to his home and checks the balance. So he doesn't get anything out.
Interesting.
At 3:30 in the morning, he gets back to his home, goes into the shed, and says in her ear, "You know this was coming," before raping her and strangling her to death.
Interesting.
From the minute she walked out of the coffee stand, there was
She was
no
dead.
chance. Yeah, exactly.
She was dead as soon as she walked out of that. Oh, that's so frustrating.
Uh-huh.
That is so gloriously frustrating.
The guy then leaves her in the shed before coming back to her on February 18th. 17 days later.
What?
Knowing that people were looking for her and reward money was involved, he got a Polaroid camera out.
Oh, God.
He wanted to make sure she looked alive, so he put on some makeup and braided her hair to make it look more believable. He took about 5 or 6 pictures before he was happy with the final product.
I'm sorry, but 17 days later, isn't she looking a little worse for the wear at that point? Unless it's like frigid, Alaska coldness, which in February, I guess it would be.
We'll get to that.
Oh, no. That bleh, yucky,
Yep.
yucky.
Oh, just wait.
I don't
Then,
oh, God.
wait, just wait. It gets so much better.
I'm trying.
Then he dismembers her body and
Bleh.
brought it out to a lake 40 miles north of Anchorage.
Yucky.
He had to make 3 separate trips because between the 5 bags containing her body and the tools he needed to saw through the ice, he couldn't manage it all in one trip with the sled he was pulling.
Yucky.
Yep. He set up a shack to make it look like he was ice fishing and used the whole inside of it to get rid of her body.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's just super.
Yeah. 61 days later, on April 2nd, 2012, authorities navigating the freezing cold water as the lake was still covered in ice retrieved her body.
In pieces.
Yep.
That's yucky.
Yeah. Okay. February 2012. Jimmy Tidwell lived in Mount Enterprise, Texas. So it's rural East Texas with and he had no desire ever to leave or to travel. He was a homebody.
Okay.
He loved living in isolation, surrounded by woods, and was building his own home.
Support that choice.
Exactly. On February 15th, Jimmy left work after working the overnight shift. He told his employer that he'd be back later that afternoon, but never showed up. His employer called his wife, and she told them that Jimmy had been working on their taxes, and she refused to wake him up. No, she'd been staying with family at this time due to the house being under construction, so she wasn't even there.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
On February 20th, his employer called the authorities for a wellness check, but after hearing nothing, they called back again on the 28th.
Mm-hmm.
That's when they realized something was really wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and the authorities had gone onto Jimmy's property, but found nothing.
Interesting.
Turns out, 5 days after he'd been reported missing, his truck was found on the side of the road, 5 miles from his house.
Okay.
Did something happen there? Or was it abandoned?
Right.
Other than his glasses laying on the seat, there were no signs of him around.
Ooh.
So now, who exactly is this teenage boy, intruder?
Are all of these things connected? I'm sure you're going to get into that right now.
Oh, yes.
Oh, geez.
And this piece of shit is named Israel Keys. Have you ever heard of him?
Why does that name sound familiar?
Oh,
It sounds strangely familiar.
just wait.
Okay, go for
just
it,
wait.
because that name sounds extremely familiar. Please enlighten me.
So he grew up in the mountains of Colville, Washington, and was the second of 10 children.
Okay.
He grew up in an ultra-religious and conservative home,
Mhm.
almost white nationalist and on the fringe. And that's why I picked this case, because where he
Okay.
grew up reminds me a lot of where they were living in Credence.
Right.
Just not nearly as glamorous, for sure.
Yeah, it's probably very fair when you're one of 10 kids.
Oh, yeah. His home was a shack of sorts, and it was 20 miles from the nearest town and paved roads and had no electricity or running water.
Ooh, that's rough.
And as the children got older, they slept outside the home in tents.
Ooh, no, thank you.
But Israel built his own home of sorts, which is what he ended up doing professionally, was building stuff.
Okay.
He never had a social security number and was homeschooled.
Oh.
Yeah, it's one of those families.
Super off the grid type of
Oh,
deal.
yeah. Oh, yeah. And like, again, super
Interesting.
super conservative.
Mm-hmm.
All this to say, he grew up in the wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
So he was removed from society with limited interaction with
Mhm.
outsiders. And there was absolutely no trust in outsiders, including teachers, lawyers, that type of thing.
Right.
So he was known to be standoffish, quiet,
Mm-hmm.
creepy, and loved weapons.
Of course.
His mother didn't speak to others. Wait, hold on. Yeah, so his mother didn't speak to others and kept to herself. And then his dad was domineering and strict and viewed women and children as property, not as humans. So men get all the best stuff and everyone else gets the piece of shit stuff.
Very old school
Yep.
way of thinking.
So given this, there's some understanding of how he conducted himself socially. Just not great.
Yeah, fair. Uh-huh. I don't know if I'd know how to conduct myself socially if I grew up in that type of situation.
Yeah. And then as many, just as you might know, animal cruelty is, they might become a serial killer. Yeah, Israel is no different. So I'm not going to go into detail for this because this is a hard boundary for me.
Okay.
Animal cruelty was involved and it was
And it was terrible and it was awful.
Awful.
Support that choice.
Yeah.
I support that choice, but we'll talk about dismemberment of human bodies. Fine. It's fine. I understand. It's fine.
I can't.
Totally good. I
Um,
understand.
So when I was watching Wild Country, one of the FBI, I don't remember if they were a profile or I don't remember what they were, but they worked for the FBI and they were saying there are many people out there who have these thoughts of animal cruelty,
Mhm.
but they don't actually act on them.
Sure.
So I think that I've never heard of that before. So I think that's really important to mention in general. Like, yeah, you might have these thoughts, but it doesn't necessarily make you a serial killer.
Right.
But
You still have the self-control to be able to say, I shouldn't do that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of it. And then, like, the difference between the people who act on it and who don't, like, that's still kind of in question.
Right.
But he was also, in addition to all this crazy shenanigans, he was also starting fires and breaking into homes to steal things.
Mm-hmm.
And as a
Okay.
teen, Keyes told his parents that he was an atheist, and they kicked him to the curb and told his siblings that they were not to interact with him. Yep.
That makes sense too.
And it's this time period where I'm assuming he saw Julie Harris and then eventually murdered her.
Okay.
And he's denied involvement because he didn't have personal interest in it, but was familiar with her case.
Okay.
And authorities believe this was a bunch of bull. And Loretta would later go to say the teen that they saw was
Mhm.
Keyes. Like she was like, no, that's
Ah.
him.
That's totally him.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
Oh.
then, according to the FBI website, between 1996 and 1998, yes, that is 1997, but this is the time frame. Like this is exactly how they word it, so I'm
Mhm.
sticking to the terminology.
Fine by me.
So he was on the Deschutes River in Oregon
Mhm.
when he managed to discreetly separate a girl who was between 14 and 18 years old from her friends
Mhm.
and raped her.
Yucky.
However, she was not killed.
Mhm.
So it wasn't clear if he let her go or if she escaped. I'm
Mhm.
assuming he let her go, but I think that was like
Okay.
the second attack he had done to kind of
Okay.
figure out what he liked doing.
Okay.
And then when he was 20, he enrolled in the army and was sent to Fort Lewis. Now keep in mind, he didn't have a social security number.
How do you get into the army without a social security number?
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly. So he was known to be a great soldier and a
Mhm.
marksman, and his skills made him just a valuable asset.
Okay.
For him, he got the time to learn how to socially interact with others. So he was like, win-win for me. I like this.
Mm-hmm.
And then between 1998 and 2001, he spent a lot of time figuring out who he was.
Okay.
And he came to the conclusion that if he wanted to kill people, he should just do it.
Oh, okay. 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 Uh-huh.
And at one point, yeah, I know, right? Alexa's looking like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Continue, please.
And then at one point, he was in Egypt for about 9 months, and he met a young Norwegian exchange student. They ended up going back to her room, and then he, quote unquote, lost control
Of course he did.
and raped her.
Of course he lost control. He probably was told no.
Probably. It was at that point that he realized his victims had to be complete strangers.
Okay, fair.
And according to a fellow soldier that he served with, when they were at Fort Lewis, they'd often go into the woods to, well, cut wood.
Sure.
And Keyes expressed his interest in robbing banks. The other soldier entertained the thought before the topic got darker.
That's weird.
Yep. We're talking kill kits.
Oh.
He'd hide kits in a place where he wanted to hurt someone, and when the time was right, he'd have the materials handy to carry out his plan.
Well done being prepared, I guess. Like, I don't know really what else to say to that other than congratulations, you're very prepared.
He's a psychopath.
He is a psychopath. He's a very prepared psychopath.
Mm-hmm. So these consisted of 5-gallon Home Depot bags filled with zip ties, duct tape, guns, ammunition, and cash, so he couldn't be traced. They were buried all over the continental U.S.
Oh,
So there's still kill kits out there that we don't know of.
that's kind of scary.
That's terrifying.
That's kind of scary.
His process would be that he'd get the urge to kill and then would plan a trip to make the homicide happen. So he was like, I'm going to go travel. And his boss would be like, okay,
Okay.
all over the place, all over the
Okay.
place. But the big thing was it was a hunt for him.
Mhm.
And despite what he told his army pals, he was known to tell stories and lies. So they couldn't really believe half of what he said anyway. Just he wasn't
Okay.
trustworthy.
Okay.
In July of 2001, he was honorably discharged and moved to Nia Bay, Washington, with his girlfriend and young child. And it's said that between 2001 and 2006, he admitted to killing 5 people.
Oh.
he
Oh.
he
Okay.
worked for the Maka tribe and worked in construction for them, and specifically he helped to renovate homes and built a variety of structures to fit their needs. So like when they had a little um farmers market of sorts, it
Uh-huh.
was like a covering for them to be under.
Mhm. Mhm.
And as you can guess, he could definitely be considered a chameleon as he was seen as a model citizen in the community.
Aren't
Like
they
they had no
all?
idea.
Aren't all serial killers like it seems like they are model
Oh
citizens.
my
They are
gosh.
they
Yeah.
are the best of the best human
Yeah.
beings. I never would have expected that from this
I
person. And it's
know,
like,
right?
are you all blind or stupid?
I think that
Or is he that good of an actor?
he was that good of an actor.
That's kind of scary.
Exactly. And I remember, like, I don't have this in my notes, but I remember that there was one point where he had like this shed of sorts that was his workstation,
Mhm.
and he would have screamo music just blaring. So, like, when people approached, they'd be like, "Oh, Israel's at work." Well, guess what he was busy doing?
Oh, it
Yeah.
wasn't actually screamo music. Or it
No,
was or it
it
was drowning
genuinely
out.
was.
Oh, it was drowning out the screams of the
Yes.
people he was
Yep.
okay, very well.
Yep. So
Mm.
I tried to look a little bit more into his time there because
Mhm,
I was
mhm.
like, what information do we know about his girlfriend? Because like I do want to be respectful of his child. Like it's
Sure,
a
if that I was gonna say, if that's his child, that's slightly terrifying
it is
too.
it is his child that they like yeah.
Oh,
Um
scary,
yeah. So
scary.
I tried to dig a little bit into his relationship and who it was, but one thing that I highly respect is that the Maka tribe hasn't made any comments to the media about Keys out of respect for his ex and their child.
Oh,
So
that's
I'm
nice
like,
of them
okay.
then.
And it's also their policy to not comment, but to be specific is something I admire. So, like, I just admire that they're taking the high road with that, as curious as people can be. They're like, no, this is more than just a whack job. Like, he has family that, like,
He has people that, like, care about him or at least did care about him for a while, and
well, I interpret it as they didn't want to be associated with him anymore.
I support that too, where it's like it's protecting her privacy and the kids'
Exactly.
privacy, where it's like, I want nothing to do with that anymore.
Yeah.
Please leave it alone.
Yeah. And that's why I was like, okay, as curious as I am, I kind of need to give this up because people loved him.
Yeah.
A woman slept with him and loved him, and he
And bore his child.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I can say based on everything that I know, like, he genuinely did love his child, which I'm
Wow.
like, "Oh, there's a little sliver of humanity there."
Or you're that good of an actor.
Yeah,
Yes.
so the relationship that they had
Mhm.
obviously didn't last, and he moved to Alaska with that child. So,
Oh.
yeah, so he did get full custody. So what I will say is that, his partner, the mother of his child, was Indigenous.
Okay.
So here's my assumption is as to say this as kindly as possible. I think it wouldn't be shocking if there was an addiction problem.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. That's so sad.
So that's like the only thing of why I can think of why he
Mhm.
get full custody is if that she just had that addiction.
An addiction is probably a big cause of it. I don't know how much racial bias has a cause in it. If he was a white man and she was
Yes.
an indigenous
Yes,
woman,
he was white.
uh, so I don't know if if that has anything to do with it either at that
Mhm.
point in time. But either way, like,
Yeah.
that's rough.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
rough. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then in April of 2009, he kidnapped a victim on the East Coast and murdered them in Tupper Lake, New York, before robbing a local bank.
Oh,
It's said that he spent a significant time in northern New York as he owned property in Franklin County and disposed of his murder weapons in St. Lawrence County.
those are very familiar places.
It would be later that hunters would come across what looked like a grave site. What was found by the FBI was a kill kit in a separate location, like on the property,
Uh,
and a pair of pistols and a silencer, which were the same weapons used in the murders of Bill and Lorraine.
you can't have those in New York. Just saying.
Yeah. So no bodies were found there, to be
Oh.
clear. And then, as we know, February 2nd of 2012 was when he attacked Samantha.
Mm.
12:39 p.m., her father called the police after going to the coffee stand, and he told dispatch that she'd been missing since she got off of work.
Mm-hmm.
Upon the arrival of the police, her father and boyfriend were there, and her father said that the boyfriend had gone to pick her up around 8:15
Mm-hmm.
and she wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
At 11:55, the boyfriend got a text from her phone saying she was angry and wouldn't be home. And her boyfriend would go on to say that he saw someone at her truck at 3 a.m. that morning and had chased after him, but the guy had gotten away.
Ooh.
When asked why the boyfriend didn't report this sooner, he said he figured she'd gotten someone to go get something out of the truck. So, regardless,
Sure.
Samantha's father was worried sick, and
Sure.
where the stand was located was a big commercial area in which someone going missing randomly was unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, with many missing persons cases, and it should be all, not many,
Mm-hmm.
should be all, search parties were organized and Samantha's face was plastered all over Anchorage.
Oof.
And so, fun fact, Samantha's mother was actually part indigenous.
Okay.
So that community was part of the search effort.
Right.
And then lime green ribbons were also put up all over town. I'm pretty sure it was her favorite color.
Okay.
And what I will say is, I also tried to get information on Samantha's mom.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's been thriving on anonymity from the media because I was
Okay.
only able to find one article about her.
Okay.
And like the picture of her featured the back of her with Samantha's grandmother at like her wake.
Okay.
And other than her being present at hearings, there's nothing on her mom.
Interesting.
So I tend to think that her mom was probably also part of the whole addiction train, but I can't confirm that. But her mom was definitely like, no, this is my daughter. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be there every
Mhm.
step of the way. Like, I might not be with her father anymore, but this is
Mhm.
my daughter. I love her. So,
You know what? Good for her.
exactly.
Good for her. If she could get it together, do whatever she needed to do for her daughter in that moment, good for her.
Yeah. So investigators looked over the stand from top to bottom, putting fingerprint powder everywhere and coming up with nothing.
Wow.
When they eventually got access to the surveillance footage, they saw just about everything I described earlier
Mhm.
until Samantha leaving and when the suspect came back to get her phone.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, looking through financial records was done, and it was discovered that Samantha had a joint bank account, and they each had individual debit cards for it.
Okay.
And it was discovered then that her debit card was missing, and minutes after it was taken, information was accessed, but funds were not withdrawn. So that's kind of where I got that information was all they're investigating.
Interesting. I wonder why he did that.
Yeah. The coffee hut surveillance footage and the ATM footage left too much to the imagination, though, to reveal who it was.
Aw.
I know.
Shit.
So, 23 days after her disappearance, her
Mhm.
boyfriend got a text from her phone with a directive to go to a dog park in town.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, it read, Connor Park sign under pic of Albert, ain't she purty?
Oh, no.
Don't know really what that means. Neither did law enforcement. They're like, what the fuck?
Okay.
They could only assume it was from whomever took her.
Right.
So the police department responded and they got to the bulletin board at the park. And on this board was a piece of paper with thanks for all the fun. And fun was in caps. And that was written at the top
Mm-hmm.
with a picture of a dog. And a passing away date was February 15th, 2012. The dog was Albert the Golden Doodle. He just lived a long, happy life, loved going to the park. And it
Oh,
was like,
okay.
thanks for the fun.
Okay.
But pinned under the sign was a Ziploc bag containing a folded piece of paper.
Oh, no.
That piece of paper was a ransom note that had been produced by a typewriter, and it suggested that Samantha was alive.
Oh, fascinating.
It demanded that...
Typewriter.
I know, right?
2012.
I know, right?
Okie dokie then.
It demanded that $30,000 be deposited to her bank account, and then maybe within a year, he might give information about where she was.
No, that's not how that works.
Yep. Along with a note was a potential proof of life photo. The woman
Mm.
was naked and bound with her hair braided and duct tape over her mouth.
Oh, nope. She's
However,
dead then.
yep,
She's dead in that photo.
yep. However, the image was so tiny that blowing it up was just not an option. Like,
Right.
it was minuscule.
Oh,
And of course, Samantha's father was brought in to identify the person in the
sure.
image, and after staring at it for quite some time, confirmed that it was her.
Sure.
And here's where the police department had to think outside the box.
Mhm.
They don't have ransom funds. Like, I didn't really know that.
I'm not overly shocked by
I'm
that.
not either, but I'm like, oh, okay. So they suggested that they get the money from the reward fund
Okay.
and put that money into her account.
Well, that was really nice of them.
So the dad agreed to put 5,000 in.
Mhm.
And then with that in place, the bank put a tracker on her account so that the police department would be notified if any activity happened in her account within 10 minutes.
Yep, that's smart.
February 29th, money was deposited, and within 6 hours, 500 was taken out.
Of course.
However, Anchorage had over 500 ATMs at that point,
Okay.
and the police department couldn't make it to the ATM in time to catch the
Oh.
suspect. However, they were able to access security footage from it,
Okay.
and what they found appeared to be a male figure wearing a mask.
Mhm.
But despite this, he appeared to fit the description of the suspect who approached Samantha, so we're talking height and build.
Right.
They also got footage of a vehicle leaving, which was a silver Nissan SUV.
Mhm.
Note, the vehicle initially seen at the coffee shop, it was a white truck. Excuse me, it wasn't a white truck. It was a white truck, not a Nissan. There we
Got
go,
it.
words.
Got it. Got it.
So this threw investigators for a loop.
Right.
And then for several days, they're just surveilling ATMs. No luck. That is until March 7th in Wilcox, Arizona.
Okay.
Based on video from the ATM, it appeared to be the same person based on body type, but still no distinguishing features.
Mhm.
The car was a small white Ford Focus.
Oh.
Maybe this was a rental car? Later on this day, there was another hit in Lordsburg, New Mexico. Then, on March 10th, there was another withdrawal in Humble, Texas.
Mhm.
On March 10th, there was another hit in Shepherd, Texas.
Wow.
That's where Texas Rangers and FBI were brought in and a bolo was put out.
Mhm.
Since this vehicle is quite common and plates couldn't be seen, this was essentially a needle in a haystack.
Dude, seriously.
Yeah.
He's like jumping all over the place.
100%.
Wow.
And this is where we find ourselves in Lufkin, Texas.
Mhm.
On March 13th, after seeing the bolo, a deputy was patrolling in town
Mhm.
and sees a white Ford Focus.
Okay.
He immediately calls a ranger, and the FBI happened to be in there,
Mhm.
and they rush to catch up with this deputy as they're tailing the Ford Focus.
Mhm.
The deputy noticed that the car accelerated, and he thought to check his radar to see if the car was speeding.
Mhm.
It was doing 58 and a 55. So it's
Okay.
like, okay, that's enough. I can do this.
That's enough for probable cause. Yep, go
Yep.
for it. Done.
So the car pulls over into a local restaurant, and when asked where the driver is coming from, they say, I'm from Alaska.
Oh,
Bingo!
you done.
They step out of the vehicle when asked and hand over their license, and it says, Israel Keys.
Oh,
He's fully cooperative as more law enforcement arrives, and he tells them that he's from Alaska, that he'd come from Alaska to Las Vegas where he rented a car.
Mhm.
He'd then driven to Texas to attend his sister's wedding.
Mhm.
As the questioning continued, Keys demanded to know more information about what was happening,
Mhm.
and he was told that under the vehicle exception rule in Texas state law,
Mhm.
they were going to do a search of his vehicle.
Okay.
So, AKA, this was a warrantless search.
Okay.
And, like, I think that's the key part is obviously we're very familiar with all of the laws in all 50 states.
Right. Totally.
So I think it's one of those things where it's like, thank God he was pulled over in Texas and this was a legitimate law that they could do. I'm like, thank God. Or else he could have just driven away.
Right. Right.
And knowing how slippery he was,
Mhm.
that would have happened.
I was about to say he's a little greaseball.
Exactly. So in the car, they found a pair of white sneakers on the passenger side. And keep in mind, in the ATM videos, the person was wearing white sneakers. In the trunk, a gray hoodie with glasses, gloves, and a mask were found. Exactly what was worn in the ATM videos.
Oh.
And what was also found were 3 rolls of cash with what appeared to be dye on them. Someone's robbed a bank.
Obviously.
Keys was officially under arrest, and upon further investigating, Samantha's debit card was found along with her cell phone.
Dun, dun, dun. You done, bro.
Oh, yeah.
You are done, my
Yeah.
friend.
Yep. So soon, Anchorage PD and the FBI in Alaska were given his name, and they immediately go to his home to see if they can find her. They're like,
Sure.
where the hell is she?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But there wasn't any luck there.
Of course.
Then a trooper spots a white truck parked in the driveway,
Mm-hmm.
and they also see a silver Nissan SUV.
Mm-hmm.
The crime scene team was brought in and gathered all electronics, including computers, and outside, a shed was found, and it was loaded onto a flatbed to go to be investigated by the FBI.
Mm-hmm. Good choice.
So, needless to say, he was sent back to Alaska and charged with theft of an access device. So that's the debit card.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
A small offense, maybe 18 months in jail, but this gave law enforcement time to build a case for for Samantha's disappearance.
Right.
So he agreed to sit down and talk about Samantha's case, but he made it clear that he knew they'd gone to his house and they had information on his computer.
Mm-hmm.
Evidence on that would incriminate him on everything.
Yes.
He went to the coffee shop because he knew they were open late, and he'd gathered that when stalking it 2 to 3 days beforehand.
Okay.
He didn't know Samantha would be there. He
Mhm.
just assumed a young girl would be working.
Sure.
And then
Any young girl will do.
Exactly.
Ugh.
Yeah. The following morning, he was going to New Orleans on a cruise. So he got up to make sure his daughter was ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
They then went to the airport and got to New Orleans, where his girlfriend met up with him the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And he figured that it was 20 degrees outside and he wouldn't have anything to worry about. So that's like your question earlier.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't think he had anything to worry about. It's cold
Obviously.
enough where he didn't have to worry about the decomposing smell.
Right. Interesting. Fascinating.
Yeah. On the cruise, he was keeping tabs on the news and saw that there was a reward being offered for finding her.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing this
Mm-hmm.
is what prompted him to do the whole ransom thing.
Ah, that makes so much
Yeah.
sense.
So when he
That's
was
why it took him so long to go back and take the picture and then
he was traveling.
Yeah.
Because I think it was also, if I remember correctly, this guy did a lot of traveling, and it's maddening to try to include it in all of this.
Right.
But he got back from his cruise, and then I think his girlfriend went back to Alaska, and then him and his daughter went to Texas, because that's where his mom lived,
Mm-hmm.
to see her.
Okay.
Like, he took
Wow.
his sweet ass time.
No kidding.
So when he was in the process of burying Samantha's body, his daughter had a parent-teacher conference, and he missed the meeting. So he's like, no, this is more important.
Okay. Okay. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then upon being shown a map, he pointed out exactly where Samantha's body would be found, along with exact details, just exact.
Mhm.
And he'd chosen the body of water based on how deep it got.
Makes sense.
So, of course, by this time, law enforcement has the feeling that there are many more victims out there based
Mhm.
on his level of planning.
Right.
And with a map in front of him, that's when Keyes pointed to Essex, Vermont. And there was a couple there that went through something similar to Samantha. That's what he said.
Mm-hmm.
So Google searches began, and the couple was quickly identified,
Mhm.
which brings us back to Bill and Lorraine.
Right.
He admitted to walking around their neighborhood and chose their home because of the way it was set up. He'd assumed they're an older couple who didn't have kids,
Mm-hmm.
as they had a swimming pool in the back of the house and a grill on the back deck.
Mm-hmm.
That said, he'd assumed that there was only one room in the house that served as a bedroom.
Right.
And on the night of the attack, he cut their phone line, sneaking around while a neighbor kept going outside for smoke breaks.
Oh.
So he knew there was people around. He didn't really
Yeah.
give a shit. He broke into their garage, and obviously the attack that we all knew
right.
went down.
Right.
And one detail that I purposely left out earlier was that the farmhouse where they were brought to
Mm-hmm.
had 2 police officers living across the street.
Oh.
So he did this all while they were there.
He enjoys the thrill of almost getting caught. Wow. You're a psycho, sir. Okay.
So
Very
their
well.
car would be found abandoned at an apartment complex a few miles from their home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
At the time when Keyes confessed to the crime, he was asked why he targeted Vermont, specifically Essex.
Mm-hmm.
It's off the beaten path, which is why Keyes responded with that he liked off the beaten path.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So it's like, there's nothing really here. It's
Uh-huh.
wilderness. And he goes, exactly. That's why I
Uh-huh.
like
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
it.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So let's go over the other deaths mentioned
Yep.
previously. Keyes was on a high from the crime involving Samantha.
Mhm.
And this is where Jimmy from Texas comes into play.
Mhm.
At the time of at the time of Jimmy's disappearance, Keyes was in the area driving around. And he only admits this because he got in exchange for a cigar from law enforcement. So he admitted to entering a remote and empty of occupants' homes. So they still had clothing there. So rooms were packed. So he dug through everything looking for guns.
Mhm.
He put different things on the floor that would catch fire differently
Mhm.
and opened certain windows to ensure the house would be consumed.
Mhm.
Like, this dude knew what he was doing.
Yeah, obviously. He plans everything very, very well.
Oh my gosh,
Like
yeah.
down to the minor details.
Oh my gosh.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So the intention was to drag all resources from law enforcement and have them report it so he could flee the area and commit a robbery.
Mhm.
And so that robbery was of a bank where it said he wore Jimmy's hard hat and sported long hair,
Mhm.
which had been taped to the inside of it.
Oh.
The theory is it was
Oh.
Jimmy's real hair.
Ew.
Yeah.
That's yucky.
Unfortunately, everything for this disguise
Mhm.
had been dumped along, like,
Mhm.
in dumpsters along his way on the road.
Mhm.
So all the evidence of this could have been linked to Jimmy,
Mhm.
but it's the fact that he was wearing Jimmy's hard helmet that
Mhm.
was like, oh shit.
Mhm. Mhm. With his hair taped to it. Blech.
hmm Um. Now, overall, there's not a lot on Deborah Feldman, but I do like to give people justice.
Mhm.
Um. So she was known to be a drifter and a deeply troubled addict who may have been working as a sex worker.
Okay.
And according to authorities, Keyes wasn't above using the services of one.
Okay.
So, according to her son, he lived with her until he was 14 when his father won custody of him. And
Okay.
for years, he remembers her doing heroin, coke, more, just not
Very
great.
sad.
And in true addict form, she told him she'd die if he ever left.
Yep, that sounds about right.
And the last time he'd ever seen her was around 2008 when she was desperate for money and demanded he give her the $400 he'd made from working at Wendy's.
No.
Like, how?
You're so far down a rabbit hole at that point that you are desperate. It is so sad that people get to that point.
Yeah. So she'd threatened to kill herself if she didn't give him cash, and in response, he handed her a knife. But he also
Oh.
knew she wouldn't do anything, and she put it down.
That's very brave of him.
Yeah. So she suddenly changed her story to say she needed money for a rent.
Okay.
Then, against his better judgment, he gave her the money because, quote, that's what family does, end quote.
Bless your soul.
And then
Bless your stupid, stupid soul.
yeah, it's just like, oh. So he knew.
Yes, yes.
The one thing he did assume based on an internet search was he thought she disappeared and that she was living in Utah under a witness protection program. Like, that's what he genuinely thought.
Okay.
And then regarding her death, he continued on to say that she would have put up a fight even under the influence of a drug and left an impression on the killer.
Sure.
So when shown her picture, and this is really what ties like her to him,
Okay.
Keyes got a disturbed look on his face and said he didn't want to talk about her yet.
Oh.
And to be clear, they found her because he had done multiple internet searches on his computer.
Oh.
Why else would you do multiple internet searches
Mhm.
on someone?
Mm-hmm.
He was looking for that this person got murdered, blah, blah, or like
Uh-huh.
found dead, whatever it may be.
Yep.
And as to be expected, Deborah's son's last interaction with her wasn't great. And he told her, if you're not going to get clean, you have no room in my life.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, good for him. That just sucks.
Yeah. Keyes admitted to going into Olympic National Park in Washington State, and after getting set up, would wait for victims to walk by.
Mm-hmm.
He'd often display a knife to convince victims this was a robbery and he needed to bind them up.
Mm-hmm.
He did have a gun, but he never felt the need to use it.
Okay.
This was part of his hunting grounds, so to him, people disappear in the park all the time, so this wouldn't be out of the norm. In his jail cell, he wrote down information about his crimes, and he wrote about a couple from Washington State where he assaulted the female first, and the man was there during all of it.
Mm-hmm.
The male was then struck with a shovel, and both victims were buried after they were killed.
Oh, that's
Their
wonderful.
disappearance got little to no media attention when they disappeared.
Wow.
And one of the bodies from Washington, so another person,
Mhm.
was buried in Lake Crescent. So
Mm.
this is just a massive,
No
like,
kidding.
I was like, holy crap.
Massive hunting ground there.
Yeah. He'd
Wow.
used 4 or 5 milk jugs filled with concrete as weights to sink it.
Wow.
So honestly, this is a case for the death penalty, and it reminds me of Ted Bundy.
Mhm.
Um, so are you aware of all the escape tactics that Ted Bundy had done?
I don't think so.
So basically, at one point, I think it was like he went to the bathroom when he had a hearing and
Mhm.
he slipped out the window.
Ah,
Yeah, like just slippery, like
right,
any
right,
way he could escape, he was going to do it.
right. So you needed to have eyes on at all times because he
Exactly.
was gonna try something fishy.
Yeah. And for me, like when you've done really awful things and you're looking to escape constantly,
Mhm.
I'm like, you kind of deserve the death penalty.
Yes, you do.
Like,
Please go and burn in hell.
and I know that doesn't happen with everyone, but
Mhm.
these are just the cases like extreme.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, so when Keys had been taken into custody a couple months, nope. After a couple months after he'd been taken into custody, he had a hearing on May 23rd. And
Mhm.
as you'd expect, he was shackled. But what was weird was he kept looking at the door.
Mhm.
He'd done it enough where a law enforcement officer moved closer to it, which was a good thing because when one of his 3 attorneys started talking to the judge, he attempted to make a break for it.
Oh,
He jumped the railing and started running to the door. Fortunately, he was grabbed and taken down before he could escape.
good choice.
And even though he didn't make a sound, he continued fighting to the point where he was tased.
Right. Good.
And here's how he managed
Perfect.
to pull off this attempt. It's kind of terrifying.
Mhm.
He'd been left in the basement for hours, which gave him a prime opportunity to take a look at his leg shackles and determine that one of the chains was really loose. For
Ooh.
hours, he wiggled the piece of metal until it came apart.
Oh.
He then took a piece of plastic wrap, something he had had from a sandwich he'd been given,
Mhm.
and used it to make a string.
Okay.
It would break and allow his legs to go 3 feet apart instead of 16 inches.
Mhm.
When asked why he did that, he said, if he had a 1% chance of escaping, what did he have to lose?
Okay.
He then giggled and said, I had muscles sore this morning I didn't even know I had.
Oh,
Like, I need to show you
you're
these videos because, like, Wild Country, like, shows all of the interrogation videos, which is
Mhm.
how most of this information was discovered.
That's fair.
And his laugh is friggin' disturbing.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So his plan was ultimately to leap across the top of each chair
Mhm.
towards the door and escape.
Okay, so you're an Olympic hurdler now. Congratulations.
4 months after his arrest, a standard search was done of his cell.
Mhm.
During this search, 12 paintings were discovered.
Paintings.
Can you guess what the paint was?
His own blood. Ugh. Yucky.
We're talking like thick line painting, by
Yeah.
the way.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
There were 11 skulls and then one pentagram with a goat on it. And one of the skull paintings said, "We are one."
Oh.
According to an article I found from KGW8 from 2013,
Mhm.
he told investigators that only one other victim's body, because of, hold on. He said that other than Samantha's body,
Uh.
only one other body had been recovered and it had been ruled as an accidental death.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's like, shit, there's so many accidental deaths ruled every day, and one of them
Mhm.
is not.
Mhm. Mhm.
In early December of 2012, Keyes got his hands on a razor to shave while in segregation. He'd gotten his hands on a piece of aluminum foil, which he then used to replace the blade when giving it back to a CO. He cut his wrists and tied a pillowcase around his neck while using his foot to tighten it. And that is what killed Israel Keyes.
I must say, good.
I know, right? Well,
Sorry for being cold and heartless
no.
about that, but thank you, sir, for ending your own life and not wasting money of the taxpayers of this country.
I think the only negative thing about that is that he was talking. Well, he didn't want to talk anymore, but investigators wanted to find out more information about the deaths that he had
Ah, so
done.
he killed himself.
He wanted control.
No.
Yeah, I know, right?
Most of these fuckers do.
Yeah.
Good God.
Yeah. So they just had no idea. But yes, like I'm very thankful that he's dead
Mm-hmm.
and that there's no way there's
Uh-huh.
we don't have to fear that he's gonna get out and start traveling, you know?
No. No, no, no.
Yeah. To this day, not all of his victims are known, but Samantha's sister and her friend have been working on a
Mhm.
bill to protect those who work at night.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called the Samantha Koenig Safety Act.
Mm-hmm.
And according to Alaska's news source, the idea came to life as of time of recording in
Mhm.
January of 2025.
Okay.
This came to life in 2024.
Okay.
And even though it had been talked about for much longer, like that's when it really came into fruition.
Right.
A friend spoke at the annual Victims of Justice Memorial in Anchorage in the summer of 2024,
Mhm.
and it was clear to her that Samantha wasn't the only victim. So many baristas have been put into unsafe positions, whether it's at work or in their personal life.
Mm-hmm.
And this act hasn't gotten very far quite yet,
Mm-hmm.
but conversations have been had with state lawmakers, and they have plans to pursue making this act happen.
Okay.
The women have also spoke to businesses who could be negatively impacted by safety measures if they were required, and the plan is to create a business license endorsement so businesses can apply for the additional endorsement.
Okay.
So it's one of those things where they're trying to like look at both sides to see like how can we make this work for everyone.
Right.
And according to the friend, quote, it would not be a requirement and they would meet certain safety standards to get this endorsement.
Mm-hmm.
This is very similar to how it's done in other states like Texas and California,
Mhm.
end quote. So regarding safety standards, better lighting, security systems, and
Yep.
emergency preparedness
Yep.
are key. The number one thing, and this is according to the friend again, the number one thing for me personally is you can have all these safety measures in place, but without adequate employee training, none of it really matters.
Right.
And at this time, there was a Facebook page called Samantha Shield that was created in March of 2020.
Mhm.
It serves as a way to remember Samantha, but to also provide updates regarding the act. And actually, it posts surveys online for public opinion. So they're
Cool.
really trying to
Okay, that's
like
cool.
figure out what's reality and what's not.
Okay.
At this point, Samantha Shield is an optional program for businesses that meet critical safety standards.
Mhm.
So to me, this is just a placeholder until the act actually has been passed.
Right.
But of course, Keyes was a serial killer,
Mhm.
and there are other victims out there. So ever since all of this went down, like there's been no leads for other cases.
Mhm.
So for now, the FBI is still working to identify all of his victims.
Mhm.
And if anyone in the public knows information about it,
Mhm.
they're asked to call 1-800-CALL-FBI with any tips.
Interesting.
So that is the creepy ass story of Israel Keyes.
He's kind of a psycho.
Kind of?
He's definitely kind of a psycho. I don't like him, but like don't want to be stereotypical, but like you grow up as one of 10 kids in the boonies with no social security card and your parents make you sleep outside and you're an atheist, but your family is like highly religious. What the fuck else are we going to expect?
Yeah. And I
I-
think that's why it was really important for me to include that was like, this is the way he grew up.
Mhm.
I think he was born with some not so good stuff.
Probably not.
But when you grow up in such a level of violence and you're treated not like a human,
Mhm.
and I will say, like, the family did move around a little bit,
Mhm.
but here's something where I might sound a little ignorant, but here's the trend I'm noticing.
Mhm.
Like, when I feel like we're constantly hearing about crimes that happen from organized religions that are so controlled that, like, you have to live your life a certain way.
Yes.
And it's almost like, well, you're kind of asking for crime to happen. You're kind of asking for men who have a lot of power to crave more power over other people.
In the worst way possible, there are a lot of people that want a lot of power, and that is a very easy way to get a lot of power
Yeah.
is just by going into a religious sect of people that really truly believe and want to believe so hard that they're willing to just turn a blind eye. It
Yeah.
literally reminds me of the book I just read about the Amish people, and their leader was a psychopath.
And this is exactly the case here.
Yeah,
So
nuts.
yes, I'm very happy that he's no longer around, but excuse me, he, yes, he craved power.
Mhm.
He wanted to dominate everything.
Mhm.
And one of the things that they were saying in Wild Country
Mhm.
was he just asked for the death penalty.
Mhm.
And when he realized that the people questioning him that he
Mhm.
thought had power didn't have as much power as he initially thought they would have, he tried to control the situation.
Ah,
And
uh-huh.
that's kind of where it all came along was he realized he didn't know, like he wanted the death penalty very quickly.
Well, of course he did,
Yeah.
because then he wasn't able to talk. And it's like, no, you're actually going to tell us who you killed.
Yeah.
And that's probably why he killed himself. It's
Yeah.
because, oh, they're going to try and make me talk. They're not going to end me. I'm going to be here for a long time because they want me to talk.
Yeah.
I mean, like, yes, that is a very weird form of control that he's got going on there. I think it is almost it's not as controlled as you would think because I don't know. I think of all the Criminal Minds episodes that I've
Yeah.
seen and all those crazy psychopaths that are on death row but are still talking, and it's like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm going to give you one person a year and this person has to come and visit me for that." Obviously, this is not reality. I know that.
Mhm.
But it's, "Oh yeah, no, this person has to come and visit me on their birthday and I will give them a location of a new victim."
Yeah.
It's like, "Oh, you're that kind of psycho.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
You're the worst of the psychopaths because we still have to pay for you to stay there.
Yeah.
Oh, and you're in an isolation because all the other prisoners hate you? Shocking."
Mhm. And I know
Oh.
that after he passed away, they were really angry at the Department of Corrections.
Mhm.
But what I will say is like when you're in a state that's so rural,
Mhm.
resources are tied.
Very limited.
So it's like, yeah, should the officers have done better to make sure he didn't do that? Yeah.
Mhm.
But at the same time, you have to think like, what are they dealing with on a daily basis?
How many other prisoners are they having to deal with other than just this one asshole?
Yeah, exactly. So that was one thing that definitely came to mind. And I also want to say, like, this is going over to Deborah Feldman again.
Mhm.
Like, there were some articles where they're like, oh, it's thought that she was the one that was killed in Tupper Lake, New York. But
Mhm.
it was another article that said, she was, there was an East Coast victim. That's specifically what it was. An East Coast victim that traveled over multiple state lines.
Interesting.
So I don't think it's Deborah Feldman.
That is interesting.
I think it's someone different. Like, there
Interesting.
was one article that I read where he was in Maine for a while. And that's, I think, more plausible than hers. So
Okay.
that's just my theory. That's my assumption. But I just want to
Right.
put that out there.
Mhm.
Um, I, yeah, there's
Mhm.
other victims out there. And
Mhm.
he's terrifying because he doesn't have an MO. He's
Mhm.
all over the
He's
place.
all over the map.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. And there's kill kits all over the country.
Yeah, that's terrifying too.
Because,
Again,
like,
glad he's dead.
oh my gosh. Because, like, the FBI website has a very well done list of all the places he's traveled,
Mhm.
and it's all over the country,
Mhm.
back and forth
Mhm.
constantly.
Mhm.
And it's just like,
What kind of thing did he do for a living where he could just travel at will?
he was a contractor.
Oh, so he could literally just go literally anywhere that he wanted and do a job there and then move on.
Well, he worked in Alaska where he worked for a guy, did the work that he was like, because that's what his employer said.
Mhm.
They're like, he was there, he did the job.
Mhm.
He was always consistent. And then he would just let us know, like, hey, I have a trip planned. And they're like, okay.
Wow.
So being a contractor gave him the ability to travel pretty much whenever he wanted to, whenever he got the
Wow.
itch. And it's just,
That's kind of crazy.
yeah,
That's wacky.
yeah.
That is super wacky.
So I really hope, if anything, that like his child
Mhm.
is able to have the most normal life that they can have.
Oh my gosh, they're going to be messed up for a long time.
I think they are, but I'm really happy that like and I'm not gonna spill the gender. I don't think I've done that, but I don't want to spill the gender
Mm,
of this child from what I've most recently read.
mm,
But I just hope that whomever they are, I hope that they're able to create a life for themselves that makes them happy, where they're not gonna forever be defined by this because
mm-hmm.
it's not their fault.
No, no, it is not.
And knowing that, I mean, again, I mentioned he was a chameleon, like,
Yeah.
they wouldn't have known. They would
No,
not have known.
no. And that's the scary part of it all, too, is like, how do you know
Yeah.
before it all comes out?
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah, you don't. So,
Ugh,
yeah. So you fucked up my brain with Credence, and I therefore fucked up your brain with Israel Keys.
thank
I
you.
think we're
Thank you so
even.
much. Thank you so much. This is great. And our next book, we've actually taken a great big turn for a nonfiction book, complete nonfiction, written by this was the grandson of this woman.
hmm
So this is called Invisible, the forgotten story of the Black woman lawyer who took down America's most powerful mobster by Stephen L. Carter. Okay. So this this is our little synopsis. So please feel free to join us the next time. She was black and a woman and a prosecutor, a graduate of Smith College and the granddaughter of slaves, as dazzlingly unlikely a combination as one could imagine in the New York of the 1930s. Yeah, blow that through your mind right there for a second. And without the strategy she devised, Lucky Luciano, the most powerful mafia boss in history, would never have been convicted. When Special Prosecutor Thomas E. Dewey selected 20 lawyers to help him clean up the city's underworld, she was the only member of his team who was not a white male. Eunice Hunton Carter, Stephen Carter's grandmother, was raised in a world of stultifying expectations about race and gender, yet by the 1940s, her professional and political successes had made her one of the most famous Black women in America. But her triumphs were shadowed by prejudice and tragedy. Greatly complicating her rise was her difficult relationship with her younger brother Alpheus, an avowed communist who, together with his friend Dashiell Hammett, would go to prison during the McCarthy era. Yet she remained unbowed. Moving, haunting, and as fast paced as a novel, Invisible tells the story of a woman who often found her path blocked by the social and political expectations of her time. But Eunice Carter never accepted defeat, and thanks to her grandson's remarkable book, her long forgotten story is once again visible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had actually suggested this book,
Yes.
and my favorite murder, like, I've started from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually a book that they've mentioned
Mm-hmm.
where they're like, oh my gosh, this book is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh my gosh, what a fantastic pick for Black History Month.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know, like, I know we've talked about it,
Mm-hmm.
but I did look this up on Storygraph just because that's what I've started using.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to add a few notes from what the app has to say about
Mm-hmm.
it. So I will say that the pace is mostly slower pace. I don't know if you found that. Did you listen to the audiobook?
I did listen to the audiobook. I find there's definitely some things I need to listen in audiobook and some I can physically read. But yeah, no, it was interesting because the story of Lucky Luciano is the first half of the book, 2/3 of the book. And then the rest of it is her battle with the notoriety and the rest of her life after the Lucky
Oh,
Luciano. And I have that in my notes too.
interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Storygraph has said it's mostly informative, a little reflective, a
Mm-hmm.
little inspiring, and a few other different categories, but they
Mm-hmm.
have said it's mostly medium and slow pace.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it's really important that these stories, and it for me, it doesn't really like gender. Yeah, that's definitely a plus,
Mm-hmm.
but these really important historic moments
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be forgotten.
Yes.
And I haven't heard of this before I heard that recommendation. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
Yeah.
No, I'd never even heard of this at all.
Yeah. So that's part of why I was like, oh my gosh, we should cover it. Cause it's just like, did you read The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks?
No. That was one of the ones that I've been meaning to read as well.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we cover it for another Black History Month.
Sure.
Because the mutual friend of ours was like, "No, you have to read it."
Mhm.
And it's one of those things where stuff was done without Henrietta's consent, and
Mhm.
it's still being used in the science world today.
Right, I remember this now.
And if I remember correctly, it was not until like 2024 last year
Mhm.
that her family got any sort of compensation.
Wow.
And so much money has
Mhm.
been made off of her contributions that were done without our consent.
Oh, that's yucky.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
That's
So
fuzzy.
that is next month.
Mhm.
Oh, this was a long episode.
It's been a long episode.
Almost 2 hours.
Holy smokes, we haven't had an episode this long in a while.
I know. Israel Keys has a lot of shit involved in it.
He's a bastard.
He's a bastard.
Bastard.
All right. So,
Find
yeah.
us on Spotify and YouTube at Books, Booze, Murder, the Gram at Books, Booze, Murder, and TikTok at Books, Booze, Murder Pod.
Yep. I had a struggle because I finished Verity and I was
Mhm.
like, Invisible hasn't arrived from the library yet.
Mhm.
How do I handle this? And thank you to the person on TikTok who goes,
Mhm.
look it up on Libby, see if it's available. And it was available as an audiobook.
Hey.
But then it was the next day that I got the call from the library saying your book's arrived. But yeah, so definitely feel free to listen. Hopefully, this better quality has made it a little bit more enjoyable of a listen. This is definitely
It's a very exciting setup.
it's very exciting. We're always striving to be better.
Mhm.
But anyway, on to February for our book club podcast, True Crime Thingamajig. But all right, until next time, bye bye.
Toodle.